Hi guys, in this video, continuing on from the video getting started in photography, we're going to take a look at getting your camera set up for the first time. Now this goes a little bit beyond setting the date and time. There's a few good tips and tricks in this video, hopefully to save you some time and help you along the way getting your camera set up ready to shoot some pictures.
The truth is, I'm not really sure what happened.
If you came to prove, there's no reason to prove.
Okay, so first thing to do when setting your camera up, or even before setting your camera up, before you start shooting, that is RTFM. You might want to Google that. Other than RTFMing, what we need to do is consider a few things that we could do with setting up on the camera. Now, of course, the obvious is the the date and time. Fairly straightforward. Okay. We've got the language, and then possibly, if you're going to be shooting video with your camera, the video system settings, whether you're going to be NTSC or PAL, and that's going to distinguish which kind of region you're using the video in, and the frame rates, 30 frames a second, 25 frames a second, whatever that may be. Now, one of the most important things to consider once we've done all of that, you've formatted your memory card, you've read the manual, set the time, we need to set the brightness on the screen. Now, most cameras, when they come out of the box, they're set to what is called auto brightness. And you see that screen's got a whole lot brighter now because it's detecting the lighting conditions that were in here. There's a video light that's on at the moment, or a softbox, and it's cranked the brightness pretty much up to full. Now, the problem with this auto brightness setting, as you're going from dark environments to light environments, it's going to shift on the brightness on the camera, and that's a problem because you judge your exposure when you're looking at the images on the back of the screen here off the brightness of it as well. So if it's constantly changing, it's constantly moving the goalpost for you. So what I recommend you do is turn that stupid auto brightness off, worst feature in the world, and set a brightness setting on the manual setting. Now, normally mine is set to 4. But I've turned it down for the purpose of the video, just so it renders a little bit better on the video camera there. Now, the reason why I've selected 4 is I've done some tests, I've shot some test frames, had a look on a calibrated screen in Lightroom, found the images that I liked, the exposure of more so than the others, put the card back in the camera, rotated through to the image, and then matched the screen in terms of brightness to make sure that it looks correct, and the histogram. So you do a little bit of testing. Okay, most people starting out might not consider doing that kind of thing, but it's worth just locking it on one brightness setting, whichever that it is. Get used to it. Don't let the camera dictate what screen brightness that you'll use. I absolutely hate that auto feature. Right, next things to consider. You have things like highlight alerts, or the blinkies, as I affectionately call them. Highlight alerts typically is enabled on my cameras, and what it actually does, if we look at an image here, that's actually enabled. If we bring an image up here, now we're looking at the small preview here, because when you look at the full screen, it doesn't give you the blinkies, which I think is a bit stupid really, but anyway. So we'll go back, and we see at the top of the head there, the hair, it's blonde hair being lit. It's blinking, saying, I'm overexposed, do something about it. Now, that amount of highlight warning I am not worried about. What we're looking at on the back of the camera, when we look at the screen here, this is a JPEG preview. It's not the RAW file, it's a JPEG, okay? Less information, there's more latitude, more room for movement and correction in a RAW file than there is in a JPEG, so that amount of overexposure is a non-issue, not a problem. Not worried about it. If a lot of hair and a bit of the forehead was blinking white, then I would need to make a change to exposure by turning the flash power down, changing the exposure settings in the camera as well, stopping down the aperture, maybe lowering the ISO. Okay, so make sure you have those turned on. Now, incidentally, when they are turned off, if we go back, disabled, we no longer get that warning. Okay. It's worth having gone. It can sometimes save you bacon, for want of a better word. Right. AF point display. Not all cameras will have this option. I know some of the Canon ones do. I have this turned off. It basically overlays the AF point that you've used on the picture using the Canon software. Who uses the Canon software these days? They all use Lightroom, so it's rather pointless. That stays off. Now the histogram, what we had a look at when we had a look at the image preview a moment ago was the histogram, and this shows you the luminosity and the red, green and blue channels in terms of the brightness and the exposure. Yes, you can look at the back of the screen preview with a JPEG, but it's good now and again to check the exposure on the histogram. So I always have the RGB histogram enabled. If you've got just the brightness enabled, then what you get, hang on a minute, did that actually save? One moment. Brightness, right. So if we go up to there and we cycle through the information, come on, get off. There we go. We just get the luminosity. Okay, typically the camera will only show you the luminosity. This is the shadows, midtones and highlights. That's it. No color references at all. Whereas if we go in and we enable, scroll back down, the RGB histogram here, okay, then straight away, my camera's set just to bring this straight up for me. It shows me the red channel, which for Caucasian, light coloured skin, that's the most important. Greens and the blues. It's also important when you're looking at products or garments, clothes, watching these channels, make sure you get no spikes at the end of the highlights and a whole bunch of deep shadowing. It depends on your creative choice that you've made for your image and for the exposures, but more information the better when you're looking at this. I can actually cycle through the whole lot on this camera and bring up all the information here. Okay, highlight 1 is still on. So it's worth having that switched on. Make sure that the screen's not on auto brightness. Okay, and also last thing to consider as well. Okay, there's tons of things in your camera. Now, I shoot RAW and I disable all the auto optimizing, dynamic lighting optimizers and all that crap off. Noise reduction is off by default. You may want to leave that on, off, your choice. I do all my post in post. So I don't bother letting the camera do all the noise reduction for me. Because I shoot RAW, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't translate into Lightroom anyway, so that's all turned off. Now, one other thing to consider is in some cameras, you can't do it in the 5D2, but you can in most of the newer cameras these days. For the 5D2, the older cameras, possibly some other cameras as well, you need to connect to a computer to do this. But add your own information. This is your name, website, email address, phone number, copyright information. You can do it in camera on some cameras. Sometimes you need to connect to a computer. That way, every single frame that you take, it has that information embedded. Now, it doesn't always mean it will always be there in all the files, because sometimes when you upload files to certain services, it strips all that data away. But I always have my details in the camera, embedded in the files, so hopefully if I lose the camera or it gets stolen, it will be returned to me via that method, with a bit of luck. Okay, so that's another thing there. Now, another thing to make sure is turned off is shoot without card. Why this is even an option, I do not know. Basically, it will allow you to take pictures when this is enabled. It will allow you to take pictures with no card in. So what you're seeing is the preview on the back of the camera, thinking you're taking pictures, and it's not. Well, it is, but it's not saving them because there's no card to write to. Worst thing in the world ever. So make sure that's switched off. So at least it will not let you take a picture or a frame when there is no card in the camera. Okay, no card. It's not going to do anything. Not going to let me take a picture. Okay, so you don't want to get to the start of a wedding or an important event and find that you've taken a whole load of, well, nothing basically, because there's no pictures saved. So they're just some quick tips on setting your camera up. A few pointers. Make sure you read the manual, set the date and time, set the screen brightness. Okay, consider the histogram settings as well. If you guys have got anything additional that you'd like to add to this and recommend, please stick it in the comments below. It's a big learning curve starting in photography, and learning your gear is a big part of it, and hopefully these little tips will help you to get going. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, feel free to share, like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.
And now you've got yourself something funky.